umegusia kuhusu Wakenya ambao wako katika mataifa ya nje kuwekeza humu nchini, kutuma fedha humu nchini kuwekeza. Lakini katika mswada wa fedha wa mwaka huu unaangazia kutoza ushuru fedha hizo ambazo zinatumwa kusaidia Wakenya walioko humu nchini. Tutafanyaje?
Okay. Thank you for that question. Basically, I'll start by the point first about KRA. I deal a lot with KRA. Before coming here, I've filed like around four returns. One is for somebody from diaspora in USA. And I think I'm just sharing with Ruth, the biggest challenge that the government needs to address in this country is sensitization and bringing awareness. I'm amazed by the basic things that people need to know but they don't know. And I'll give a very good example. We have e-citizen. Do you know that literally any citizen should know to operate e-citizen account? You had this government, of course, I will give them a plus. In terms of digitization, like one thing I'll recommend them is about government, if you're registering, like for example, a business. Nowadays it is so fast. When you feed the data and you pay, you get it. Not like Kitambo, you have to go to Sharia house, get a lawyer, pay kitu kidogo and all that. But one thing that has made me so mad, and most of the time I have to educate a client before they give me the business. For example, if you register a limited company, by law, there are two things that people confuse. There's the KRA returns, which is now like the calendar year that is by 30th of June. But there's another return called BRS returns, which you are required to do at the calendar year. Like if you register your company, like let's say today is 12th June 2025. Next year, such kind of a time or before, you are required to file a report saying that the status of your company in terms of directors, if they change, like if you are doing construction, for example, and you have changed the activity, you are supposed to give those reviews. Then the government charges you 1,000 when you do it on time. If you don't do it on time, even if the date passes by a day, you will add another 500, so it becomes 1,550. I've been dealing with cases of people who registered companies, most of them are in diaspora, but the questions you are asking Belinda about, why don't diaspora people put their money here and invest? Alongside a very simple way, there's lack of trust. From the individual to the government, you had guys in diaspora saying they have been sending money home, even to their parents and families, to be able to do even a project like build a house, but the money is used. Then the second version now is the government. And Ruth mentioned it, even the treasury bills. People used to really trust the government, wanasema government haiwezi sota. But saizi kenye inafanyika ni kwamba watu wanaogopa hiyo pesa yao, ili wameweka huko ndio itatumika kwa elections. So there's that uncertainty. You've seen the affordable housing. The other day when the properties were being launched, the houses are being done in a nice way, and if you have been living in a single room and you are told you are going to a bed sitter, you are excited. But now you hear the stories of the people who are being given those houses in the ordinary way. The common mwananchi is being neglected. So I think the government just needs to, in terms of like the branding, to bring the trust on board. On the matter of KRA again, there has been a war. I've sat in one of the things I've had the privilege to do is to deal with cases. I've been into it's what we call tribunal. Like for example, if the government penalizes you, like let me give a good example. If you are registered a company and you don't file taxes, either nil or the normal tax you're supposed to pay, you'll be given a penalty. For a company, it is 20,000 if your tax obligation was income tax. Now, if it is VAT added, it means every month if you don't file, you'll be getting a penalty of 10,000. Now, majority of the people don't know these things. And most of the Kenyans, for example, they only register a company when they want to do a tender. Once they do the tender, they forget those documents. So the question you are asking about the environment, now the governments need to sensitize people. Like even before you enter that transaction, do you know the nitty-gritties like A, B, C, D and all that? So, and I think the government is also riding on that ignorance. And you are just mentioning that the budget, you're telling that there are no amendments. Like one thing I was very key about that budget is the data protection law that is talking about the KRA and the banks being given the mandate to access your data. Now that if you have been filing nil, but anaenda kwa M-Pesa yako anaona the transactions have been happening. Now they want to use that data because somebody said maybe, like for example, there are people, their husband send the money to buy supper. You send your wife money to buy supper, it may not be her income. But now if they want to use that data that like this month, this woman has transacted 100,000 as income, it will bring a very big problem.
Yeah.
Before that came, there was the issue of the tills. We have businesses like you go to ECB, people no longer don't want to pay things with the till. Unaenda kununua kitu anasema
withdraw.
withdraw that. So I think those are some of the things that is making even the diaspora people to be afraid to put their money. But actually they have money. I've had opportunity to talk to them. They want to do things, but that fear is there.
Kwa hivyo ushuru huu ukiwekwa kwenye pesa zinazotoka nje kuja huku, watu walioko katika mataifa ya nje watakosa kusaidia Wakenya humu nchini.
Yeah. Is that thing of the trust? And by the way, if you look at the data about transmit what do we call it? The money sent from diaspora.
Remittances?
Remittances.
Right.
It's big.
Yeah.
It's big. Yeah.
Okay, Ngugi, I'll come to you. Let's talk about county governments. Now, the framers of the Constitution, when they came up with the 2010 Constitution and the devolved functions, it was basically to bring services to the people. But if you look at the county governments, they still decry funding gaps and funding shortages, and sometimes they go months without the Treasury remitting money to them. Now, when the head of state came into office, he came up with the bottom-up economic agenda, basically from the bottom, right, to the top. And that seems not really realistic, because this budget normally would, be made right at the national government and then trickle down all the way to the counties. And so how do we make sure that the devolved functions survive the next 10 years?
I think the first step is honesty. And honesty in doing away with duplication of responsibilities. And that is one thing that I think the Finance Act tried to fight. And duplication in the sense that there is what the President has purported to do, using things like the bursaries and using other things that he has tried to popularize himself with,
right,
that are still being done by governors, and that are the responsibilities of other leaders elected by the people. And so the first thing will be to stop wastage of money through duplicity. Because when they duplicate this responsibility, then a lot of money is wasted that again does not bring returns that are commensurate to what has been spent. So I think that would be the first place to start. And again, also honesty in terms of understanding that each elected leader at every level has mandate that is given to them by the Constitution. And that must not be done away with. And that must not be what we say isiingiliwe. Because politicization of these positions has made it difficult for both the central government and also the county governments to achieve what they had promised the electorate that they will achieve. And I think, in all honesty, the politicization of the allocation of these funds, that the president will, or the government will hold on to them as a tool or a weapon to ensure that he controls these governance, is one of the problems. So I think that is what must be fought. I also saw another example that maybe we can use in what we call the affordable housing, where these monies that were supposed or were collected allegedly for building these affordable houses were again, the president and the governor seem to agree that now they should build markets. You see, there is also some sort of ukora and conmanship, trying to defraud citizens or even civil servants of the monies that have been collected, because you cannot collect monies from citizens for a particular project and then say that you will now shift that to another thing, while the citizens themselves who are giving you such revenues had expectations.
Right.
The same thing as my brother Bernard has said, that there are expectations from the public. And these expectations are what the government must try not to manage, but to work in accordance with what they had promised. That if, for example, you are to collect money from me, I need to know the criterion that you will use. If the houses are built, I need to know the criteria that you are planning to use, so I get those houses. But if there is no clear plan, there is no clear criteria for saying that these houses will be allocated to certain people in this cadre, they will be allocated to others in this category, then it is not a clear thing. So I think honesty is key, and also doing away with greed, because I think for all administrations that we have had in this country, despite me not being there in the first administration by Jomo Kenyatta, of course, but also having seen the administration of Moi, I think this government has failed to inspire hope.
Right.
That is a thing that must be clear. That despite every tool that the Constitution has given to it to ensure that it thrives by delegating these small powers and this kind of allocations and spending to others, the government has failed because it wants to backtrack and backslide to the past where we have already gone from. So I think that is it for me. Honesty is key, and doing away with greed.
Yeah. Why is the government thinking of diverting about 119.6 billion shillings of housing to build other social amenities? Because Kenyans will think we pay taxes through other means to do things like that. And there's this one that was introduced for specifically housing. So why would the government want to do that?
Very simple, politics. Because I think it has gotten to a point that this administration honestly feels insecure. And they will love to get these small monies from every corner to ensure that they spread, they give it to Mwananchi as handouts. And you will see that in what is being called the economic empowerment. In all honesty, that is not economic empowerment.
What is it?
Those are just handouts that have been given, trying to untwist the citizen to loving them back, which cannot happen. Because again, people are, when you are dealing with someone who is hungry, I think there is only too much that, I mean,
you can
one can abandon, one can. So I think politics is one of it, that this government or the president, if I were to be clear enough, the president has mixed politics and governance. And he has mixed his work with politics, and now he's trying to catch up on the mistakes that he has done in the past. So I think it is wrong to divert these funds to what they were not meant for.
Right.
Because that is also enabling these other elected leaders like the governors and others, including the MCAs, to try and look for avenues in which they can now talk to them, sweet talk them on each using funds that were meant for development. And that is wrong.
Right. Unajua Bwana Sakaja Jumapili alitetea akasema kwamba hauwezi jengea watu nyumba bila kujengea watu shule ndani ya hizo nyumba, bila kujengea watu soko ndani ya hizo nyumba. Na swali langu kuu lilikuwa wakipanga mikakati yao yote, hawakuwa wamejumuisha masuala yote ndani ya bajeti moja. Unajua ni swala ambalo watu wengi pia wanajiuliza, mbona tutenge bajeti nyingine tena? Naam. Ulikuwa unataka kuzungumza.
I just wanted to add a point that it is one of the amazing things I think we're just sharing with us, that even to bring the much of using of the funds, every government that comes in is like they start from a clean slate. But if you were to look at a good leadership, there should be always the handing over of the baton. And I will give a very good, the current housing we are talking about started with Kibaki and then Uhuru Kenyatta. Like Uhuru Kenyatta had the Big Four agenda, and housing was one of them. Why did we not build from where Uhuru left, instead of every president coming and saying we are starting from zero? I look at the SHA issue and the NHIF thing, and even diversion of the fund. You are being told as a system, if actually people are saying the NHIF thing was serving better. I remember there's a day my wife was in hospital, and almost 50,000 was paid by that thing. just like that. But the current one, people are still don't even know and all that.
Yeah,
so I think one of the things that is even bringing the problem, we are saying we don't have resources, too much allocations into things that will not even be used for the money and all that. So if the government would just build, I think it is something the African leadership would be able to learn. Let's not start from scratch, because it is hard. Like I built this house, imagine we build this house, another leader comes and says, this house, let's start from zero. Instead of just coming and say, this leader brought it from point A, B. Can I pick it from C to the other point? Yeah.
All right, Juma, I'll come to you. There have been so much complaints every budget cycle of budgeted corruption and institutions that people feel, yes, we're giving these institutions money, but at the end of the day, they're not serving the purpose that were supposed to serve as independent institutions. For example, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is going to will benefit from 4.2 billion shillings, the National Intelligence Service from 51 billion, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions 4.08 billion, IPOA at 1.2 billion. NIS says this money is not enough. They need 65 billion, so they're asking for 14 billion shillings more. But if you look at these institutions and what they're plagued with and concerns Kenyans have concerning these institutions, especially when you talk about things like extrajudicial killings, when you talk about things like forced disappearances and cases in court which are being prosecuted and then dropped, or sometimes they don't get to, as far as Kenyans would expect. Is there an issue with funding these offices fast? And how do they fix the mess that they're in right now in terms of public perception?
Oh, thank you so much. And as I said earlier, the leadership that we have right now, it is anti-people. And this is clearly seen. Angalia mahali ambapo wameweka pesa. And it raises eyebrows. And most of us and many Kenyans are asking ourselves questions. Because look at the areas where they are funding. And where is it that the government is specifically funding a particular sector of its government, like in policing? Sekta nyingi sana ya polisi, angalia ya IG, wamepewa pesa. Ukiangalia DCI, wamepewa pesa. And the reason behind this is not that because the government want to better their services. That's not the case.
What do you mean?
The reality here is this guy wanataka kuwaweka karibu. They are bringing the police forces close to them. Because once they give you money, number one, they will dictate what to do. Because number one, wakati unapata mtu amekupa chakula umeshiba, mara nyingi utafuata maneno yake kwa sababu anakulisha, anakuweka vizuri. So the government right now kile kinafanya wanajipanga for the election of 2027. That is why they want to ensure that indeed all these forces, they have enough capital. So that at no given point will these police officers go against their says. Because once umewalisha wako sawa, and you can look at the case like ile inaendelea na Nisa Albert. These guys ukiangalia kama IG, hakuna kitu anaongea. Na ukiangalia the spokesperson of police, what alisema na kile ambacho mdogo wake anasema ama kile boss wake anasema ni contrary. It means that it is one way and it is communicating clearly that the government doesn't care about mwananchi wa chini. Inaangazia nini? Lazima ilisha hao wadosi wawili watatu wale wakubwa, iwapatie pesa so that waendelee kuumiza mwananchi. So this issue, the government has lost the focus. Kwa sababu this government is supposed to invest in productive projects. Na kuchukua pesa nyingi kuweka kwa miradi ya watu ambao watusaidii. And this is a very serious concern to Kenyans kwa sababu right now sasa ukipata shida wewe uende kwa DCI uripoti. I'm telling you utazunguka 2 years hawataipata shida. Hata sasa uibiwa hapa nje uende uripoti hawataipata mwizi. Na ukiingia hapa hata DCI lazima uwe unajua mtu kule DCI. Na lazima uwe na pesa ndio kesi yako iweze kufanya nini, kufuatiliwa. Na inaonyesha kuwa the government is serving their own interest. Na hawako na mwananchi. Ndio sababu unaangazia hii budget yetu ya 2025-2026, it is anti-people. Anti-people completely. Right. Yeah.
Now, nikuje kwako Bolo, tuangazie hii neonatal tax, ushuru mpya kwa huduma za afya ya watoto wachanga. Kama mtetezi au mtaalamu wa masuala ya kijinsia, ushuru huu utaathiri vipi wale wa mama wachanga? Nimeona mitandaoni wakisema kwamba sasa wanaondoa linda mama. Linda mama ilikuwa inasaidia. Maoni yako ni yapi?
Asante. Nikubalishe nianze kwanza na maneno ya county, because I have a passion in the devolved government, and I'd like to just start by addressing, of course, congratulating the CS, because he has actually met the constitutional threshold in terms of allocation. The question then becomes, will this money be implemented as it is supposed to be? One of the things that I noted is that there's an increase in the allocation that is being given this time round as opposed to the previous years. And there are a lot of things that they have hidden in there, including the FLOCA fund. And the question then needs to be, because even tying to your earlier question on how we can generate the revenue to be able to close this 1 trillion gap. And when you asked about the counties, two things came to my mind. One is that FLOCA fund. Why are we having a FLOCA fund? And we have members of county assemblies who do not understand it. Why are we having a FLOCA fund when we have policy and documentation years down the line that do not reflect the true spirit of it? You find a document is a policy, a climate policy document, or a FLOCA fund policy document in County A, but apart from the cover page, all the other wordings inside the document is for County B. So why are we having a fund when people don't understand it? But there are also a lot of benchmarking trips and whatnot that happens in this country. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but what I'm saying is, when this happens, can we have a law that then introduces a certain percentage? So if this county assembly goes to China for benchmarking, for example, or Spain, or wherever we're going to, can we ensure that before those 5 years have passed, we have brought back an investment worth a minimum of 10% of the amount that we spent on that benchmarking trip? So I'm not saying let them not go, but I'm saying, can we see some return on investment? Because you're going for the benchmarking trip, and then how many times have they gone to benchmark the BRT system? Do we have one in Kenya? No. Years down the line. So I think those are some of the things that we need to do even as we are discussing the county governments. When we talk about the investment in pending bills, or rather the pending bills that are there that have become a headache and a topic every time, to the point that people are saying one of the 1,000 ways to die is to become a tenderpreneur in Kenya. It's very unfortunate, because you can imagine you've taken a loan, you are now servicing a loan, but you have not been paid. Your loan is growing interest, but the amount that you are owed by your county government is not accruing any interest. So there needs to be a law that is introduced that places, an interest on those on the amounts that are owed by service providers, but also to stipulate a definitive time that those payments need to be made. Now, to your question on the neonatal tax, one of the things that this budget did and this finance bill did was to pride itself in gender neutral language. And there is only one example that was being used, and that is the amendment of one of the taxes. I'll just get the exact one. To read that initially it was reading that if your husband is supporting you, then there are certain taxes that they're exempt from. So now that has been changed from husband to spouse. And all of a sudden the whole document is gender neutral. But there are these things like what we discussed earlier on the SMEs, what we talked about, the digital Amendment Act, and now the neonatal tax. I think what this budget does, it is crippling women. It's taking us back to a point where we are saying, number one, let us not go to work and let us not go to school. Let us just stay at home so that whatever little and we're now telling our spouses, don't even send me money, leave the money before you leave work, because if you send it to me, watakuja kunitax. So those are some of the things, and it's very unfortunate, and we might look at it, but if you look at the people who have taken a beautiful photo today after reading the finance bill, there is no woman. If you look at the finance committee in parliament, It's just the other day when Honorable Gasheri was added, but for a very long time we had just one woman. So in the key decision-making spaces where these women, where decisions for and about women are to be made, we don't have the numbers. And I think that's a whole different conversation that we need to have. But what that is doing is we are now being forced to go for things like family planning, not by choice, but by circumstances. We are now being forced to relook at even the kind of jobs that we want to do. So I think it's not just the neonatal tax. There's a lot in that document that pushes us and really oppresses the women of this country.
Right. Ngogi, I'd love to come to get your thoughts on issues to do with the supplementary budget. Especially for this country, we get a budget 2025, 2026, for example. And then later on in the financial year, you get, oh, we've got another supplementary budget to fund this and to do that. Now, last year, or the year that is to end, that is to come to a close, the financial year, we had about 2 to 3 supplementary budgets because obviously the bill was withdrawn and all that happened. But what is the essence to include everything we want to include in a budget, and then later on in the year we think, oh my God, we need a supplementary budget for this again and for that again? What is the essence of that?
I think to begin with, the essence of having a budget is to guide us and to give us a clear framework of what we need done and to help us remain on the road and not to deviate from what we have planned to do. But we see a situation in this country where the government along the way loses focus, and even in its creation of its own budget does not consider the fact that they have policies that they needed to implement, and they had projects that they had planned from the very beginning when they were campaigning to implement. And so because of that, greed goes ahead of them. And because of greed going ahead of them, then they have, now we are at a point where we can no longer say we have budgeted corruption, because now the greed has exceeded even the levels which we have seen before. Yeah. We have not witnessed this before. We have not witnessed a situation where now, because of the kind of how fast our politics moves, now the government needs to be creative in terms of now going out of its way to seem to be doing what they are not doing. And an example of which we can see that there are these monies that, again, I had mentioned earlier, that are being dished to people. We have people who are complaining in Mount Kenya region, where I come from, that they are being given beans, and others are being given maize, while others are being given other better things according to the people. So I think that conversation in itself should not even exist, because in the first place we should be talking of development projects that are taking place in these regions. We should not be talking about handouts. We should not be talking about, I was given a motorbike. It's okay, I've been given a motorbike, so what after that? So I think the whole thing is that the government, in its way of trying to be creative with its politics and coping with it, goes out of its way to create, things that did not exist, so that they can use those things to remove monies and to give handouts so that they buy loyalty from people. So I think it's about buying loyalty more than developing or giving these people a return for what they have been giving as revenues. I think that is it.
Okay.
Bwana Bernard, kuna shilingi bilioni 42.4 ambazo zimetengewa hospitali za rufaa, ambazo zitasaidia kwa kulipa madeni, kufanya mawili matatu, kupigwa jeki kwa hospitali za rufaa mbalimbali humu nchini. Lakini kumekuwa na swala la kutatiza sana taasisi za serikali humu nchini. Hazijisimamii zenyewe, kila ziko na mashida ya madeni. Ni kipi ambacho kinasumbua? Donda sugu liko wapi haswa?
Okay. I think this comes back to the leadership, and my friend, the one representing the ODM.
Our broad-based person.
Yes. So he said the government is anti-people. Actually, one of the books that really changed my life when I was in high school is a book called A Man of the People by Chinua Achebe. And one of the statements that has never left my mind, it says, actually it's about the politics. Of course, it's there in West Africa, but one of the things this book talks about is a statement that Chinua states and says that politics is a dirty game and cannot be played without soiling of hands. It is very, very hard. You've seen in our country, even the church trying to, they are being lured this side and that side, being given. Actually, I was telling somebody, when one of the summary I had about this budget, I was trying to, what will I say when I come here, but one thing I was hearing to Metenga, which our president is known for. We have set aside. So you ask yourself, where is this money always coming from? That yesterday you were in Nyanza and you have set billions. You go to Central, again you have set. So when you come about the hospital, actually it is very, very debilitating to see people die, even young babies. Then when you talk about level 4, level 5 hospital, and then you are told you go to the hospital and there are no drugs. Leave that alone. The doctors, there has been strikes about doctors and teachers in this country. And I ask myself, you hear the corruptions that are taking place in terms of bill, and you ask yourself, when is that money not being used? And you just say, teachers, can we just add you even 50,000? Because somebody joked one day, we have 50 million people.
Yeah.
What if the government just decides to give everybody 1 million? Because the kind of funds we lose, because one thing that is happening, my friend mentioned about the tenderpreneur. I've been dealing with people who have done tenders, and you can see the pain that people really go through it. And one thing that happens, if the government does not pay the entrepreneurs, the money does not flow down to the economy. So when the government does not release the funds, for example, the payments, these other people, because mtu mwenye ana supply vitabu atakwambia hajalipwa. Mashule watakwambia hii na hii hajafanyika. So concerning even the hospital, I think the infrastructure is the infrastructure in terms of the facilities, but secondly, there's the infrastructure in terms of the humanity. Doctors have been demoralized even to do the job, and most of them actually who are going to America. One of the easiest things to enter America with is the nursing course. People who are left here, they go to America, and they are paid very well per time and all that. So if they would work on the humanity, support the doctors, but also the infrastructures. I come from one of the interesting counties. I come from Siaya County. Every time I land in that city, or that town, like I'm never seeing anything that has been done. It's like, and the money that they're
just around about.
So you see the money has been allocated, but nothing tangible is being done in the. And as he said, the politicians, we fight most of the times as the citizens. But the reality is that the politicians meet at Serenas, Safari Park, and they drink tea. So when Nigeria are fighting, mini mtu wa ODA, mini mtu wa UDA, to me I left that nonsense. When I wake up every day, I ask myself, what can put food on my table? If it is cleaning for somebody a house, by the way, and he will pay me money, I better do that, instead of engaging into something, because you only realize it when you are in problem, that this politics anyway, it doesn't pay. Thank you.
Ruth, you had something?
Yes, but allow me to start by consoling you that finally you'll have something to write about as Siaya people other than your pink roundabout, because there is some money that has been set aside for the pyre. But that is on a light note. So I wanted to talk a bit about the health question that you asked. Now, Kenya is a part of the Abuja Protocol that dictates that we need to set aside about 15% of our budget to go to health. And every budget year I ask myself, why did we sign this thing if we did not want to abide by it? Why do we go around being part of protocols and treaties that we have no intention of matching up to? So I feel the health sector is not even one we should be struggling with. Because if we are able to meet at least even 10%, because we are I think we are now at 4.3 if you look at today's budget. If we even get to 10% or 12%, it's then easy to look for development bodies and development partners and tell them, look, we need to get to 15%, but tumejaribu tumefika 12%. Are we able to do something? When during COVID, we had nations like Denmark that were donating vaccines to the country. Why can't we go back and tell them we need to get to this 15%? Help us with this 2%, and that is a sector that's going to be treated. So we some of the solutions we have them, but we don't want to look at them. If you look at if you listen again to today's budget, there's a lot of money that has been set aside for vulnerable groups. And I put that in quote because we don't know about it. We don't hear about it. If you look at, most of it has gone to PWDs and orphans.
Yeah.
Now, I can tell you, you know how during COVID you were asking, do you know someone who knows someone who has COVID? Now, I don't know someone who knows someone, but I know someone who is an orphan, and they don't know about this amount. But when they are going to be reporting to us and they are going to be accounting for this amount, they will tell us that they gave cash transfers to X amount. Of what use is it? I think some of the government priorities is something that I'm really worried about, and our health sector is something that I'm worried about, not just at the national level, but also at the county level. If you look at a number of hospitals, we have strikes. Almost, I can guarantee you that almost every month or almost every 2 months, there is a county somewhere where health workers are striking. I think so. For the health industry, it's one that really needs to be looked at. In fact, this FLOCA fund that I spoke about needs to be slashed in half. The other half needs to go to the health sector because it needs it more.
Yeah. Juma, I'll come to you. Let's talk about education. I remember a few days, if not weeks ago, there was a headline on one of the local dailies that spoke about end of free education. And it was such a headline that if you've benefited from this free education that began back with the late President Moi Kibaki, you'd understand the concept of what it means to take it away from parents. Now, the CS has allocated 51 billion shillings to secondary schools, 28.8 billion shillings to JSS, as well as this money allocated to primary schools. And my question would be, we are talking about huge chunks of money, but we are not delivering to schools as capitation. And schools are running the risk of either shutting down or laying that burden to parents to be able to cater for this huge school fees or, huge fee per learner. And so what do we do about education? Because to end this free education, which I don't know if it's free, by the way, I'm not really sure if it's free, but to end this sort of big burden that we have put on parents sometimes, what do we need to do to ensure that everybody can go through education, no matter how basic it is?
Thank you so much. And maybe before I respond to that issue of education, allow me to go back a little bit about the issue of county government. And I think from where I sit as a country, we want to appreciate the new constitution and the issue of majimboism, ugatuzi ambao unaendelea 47 counties. But from where I sit nimeangalia kuna matatizo mengi sana, because I feel like as a country, Kenya #1, kwanza we don't need to have the 47 counties. And my argument, and anybody else who has sound mind knows this as a reality, we don't need the 47 governors, the 47 deputy governors. Sababu create so many offices ambazo hazisaidii wananchi. Na ukiangalia issue ya county government, my brother here from Siaya has just told us that indeed he has seen a lot of nothing in Siaya. And Siaya is one of the countries that we respect in Kenya because iko na wasomi maprofesa wengi sana. And I wonder when my professor they don't want to do something in Siaya. Those are guys we respect so much. And the biggest problem we have here in Kenya ni constitution yetu. And I think if we can work on it as a country, we need a constitutional reform. Because I have a privilege and nime interact na some MCAs at the city hall here. Many times ukizunguka hii town, ukienda city hall, look at the MCAs. We have more than 100 MCAs. 85 elected, kuna nominated. Watu wengi sana ambao kwa kweli they add no value. But they are just taking away our money. Kwa sababu gani nasema hivyo? Even the county government of Nairobi, utapata MCAs wako hapo, but the biggest problem tuko nayo, hata sasa utapata wanasiasa wengi anasimama naomba uongozi. But ukimuuliza what do you want to do, haelewi nini anafanya. Completely. Kuna MCA wengi, City Hall is a good example. 80% of MCAs, elected and nominated MCAs, they don't know why they are in those offices they are holding right now. Na ni changamoto kubwa sana kwa sababu hawawezi implement chochote kwa sababu hawajui nini wanachokifanya. Na tatizo tuko nalo ni mambo ya siasa. Siasa imeingia na imeharibu nini? Mambo ya kura na mambo ya uongozi bora. So the best thing tunaweza fanya as a country, number one, lazima tuangazie mambo ya katiba yetu. And it is high time we as Kenyans, we as the young people, number one, tuangalie mambo ya constitution yetu. We need to reduce, number one, these 47 counties to at least 10, maximum of 10, ambazo tunaweza kuwa na watu ambao wanaelewa what they are doing. Because when you tell me the government in the recent allocation, wameongezewa pesa, who is going to manage that money? The biggest problem is that ukiangalia the CECs wenye wako kwa ofisi, they don't know what is expected of them. So kunakuwa na changamoto kubwa sana. Ndio ndugu yangu hapa anazungumzia mambo ya migomo ya madaktari, kwa sababu ukiingia any county sasa uuliza hata anayesimamia mambo ya health haelewi chochote. Ingia mambo ya education, that person doesn't know anything about education. Lakini because they know somebody who knows somebody somewhere, or because they had some financial stability somehow, wakapata uongozi fulani, but they are not representing the common mwananchi. And this one now rolls direct to the issue of education, the national the allocation ambayo imetolewa. And we have a big problem, and this is something recently we had what we call a public participation, whereby the MPs they wanted the issue of NG-CDF iwe bado kwa nini kwa county zao, so that they can manage that money. And my big question is, indeed, if these people, honorable members, allow me to call them honorable members, though some of them they don't deserve to be called so. But the issue here is, if they mean well for the common mwananchi, mbona wasiseme hizi pesa zote ambazo kuna zile mambo ya education eti kuna MCA akona pesa ambayo anataka kupeana basari, uangalie MP kuna pesa anataka kupeana kwa kama basari, governor the same, ukienda state president naye the same. Surely how much are you earning, are you getting from basari? The maximum watu wengi wanapewa shilingi 1500.
So do we harmonize our education funds?
That is it. That is the way to go. Because let's have an educational fund. Iweko mahali pamoja na tuseme yenyewe the government imetenga pesa fulani because our president anajua kutenga, atenge hizo pesa vizuri na aseme this money is specifically for what? Education. And we want to thank was it the second or the third president, Kibaki. At least Kibaki kuna kitu tunamjua nayo. I'm a beneficiary of free education from is it class 2? Yeah, I got that one because of Kibaki. But can you imagine right now, pesa CDF is a nice thing, but I'm telling you the reality is, the more tunakuwa na many institutions that is handling this money, yani tunapeleka devolution ya corruption everywhere in each and every office. So the government should just be very specific. It should be very intentional. Now we harmonize all these funds. Wasema we have a kitty for free education from preschool to university. Yeah. That way we'll say indeed these guys, they are working and they are working for the people. Yeah.
Ni kuja kwako Bwana Ndegwa. Tunaona kwamba huu mfuko wa hazina ya Hustler Fund umepigwa jeki na shilingi milioni 300. Kulikuwa kuna madeni ambayo serikali iliamua kusamehea Wakenya waliokopa deni hizo. Tuna haja kweli ya kuongeza pesa mahali zikichukuliwa hazirudishwi, ama mpango huu wote wa Hustler Fund ulikuwa na manufaa gani?
Wacha niseme kwamba mpango huu wa Hustler Fund hauonekani kama ulikuwa umepangwa vile ambavyo ilistahili, na kwa sababu ya kuingia in a rush and not planning properly to understand that when to set clear guidelines on how this project is to be rolled out and how those who borrow are going to be followed to return or to pay back the money. I think that is the first mistake that we did. The same thing as we had done with the BRT, where we rolled out a project that clear planning had not been done in the first place. So I think it was not well thought out, And I will equate this failed project, because it is a failed project, to a program that we had in Kiambu during the tenure of one of our former governors, because we have very many former governors now. Honorable Waititu. And this program was the Car Sober program, which was rolled out without clear planning on what the treatment plan is for these people who are being called alcoholics, because it was not just to be solved by giving them handouts. Rehabilitation is something that requires a clear plan on how these people are going to be treated. In the same way, Hustler Fund needed a clear plan on how these monies are going to be returned, and whether this is a profit-making venture. Because if it is a profit-making venture for the government, then it should be something that drives itself and funds itself over the years and over and over and over, without having to inject more monies into it. So I think, for me, this is a failed project, and these are monies that will be wasted and that will never be recovered. Because again, we might want to romanticize, and we had done that in the first years of this administration. We might want to romanticize the idea that we are dealing with a category of citizens who are at the lowest level and who need just a 500 shillings boost for their business to thrive. But that is not the case, in all honesty. To be honest, 500 shillings will not save a business that is falling. That is just the mere truth.
Yeah.
We need a clear plan. We need a clear plan.
Yeah.
And in my own opinion, I think even giving 20,000 shillings to a group of 5 or 10 or 20 youths does not help them in any way. This is just pocket change that you are giving them for them to eat today and tomorrow, and then they will have the problem. You'll have problem with them on starting to following them up to pay that money. So I think there is a lot that needs to be done in terms of this Hustler Fund. And for me, I think we are not yet there in terms of helping or empowering young people or even the general public. So I think for me that is a failed project, and we have wasted a lot of money in it. Millions of money that we will never get back. Just in the same way, we have wasted a lot of money in corruption. Monies that we do not follow up these people even after they are taken to courts and found guilty, we do not follow them up to pay this money. So there is lack of accountability, and there is lack of transparency in how the monies in Hustler Fund have been dished out to people.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Maybe nikiongezea kidogo kwa mambo ya Hustler Fund. Ni mambo ambayo inahusu vijana kwa undani sana, kwa sababu ukiangazia Hustler Fund ililetwa kwa msingi wa kusaidia wananchi. But to be very sincere and when we are very frank, hata president akisimama leo hakuna kijana hata mmoja ambaye atasimama aseme nyewe I'm a beneficiary from Hustler Fund. Kwa hivyo the first thing that the government need to do, number one, we need a clear audit of the Hustler Fund. Ya pesa ambazo ziliwekwa kule. We want to be told ni pesa ngapi ziliwekwa na ni wangapi wamechukua, because the government is playing with the mwananchi. Na I believe personally from where I sit, Hustler Fund kiti ni pesa ya wash imewekwa mahali. Hiyo ni pesa mtu anapanga, anasema hapa nitaweka how many billion so that nisukume huko kidogo kidogo. After some time mtakuja kusema watu hawajalipa, because hatujui ni nani anafuatilia hii pesa. Remember, watu wakikopa Hustler Fund, mimi nimeikopa. Yes, nimekopa. Kuna pesa ambayo
wanalipa.
Wanakuambia unaweka savings.
Kuna pesa inachukuliwa, wanakuambia unaisave. So the biggest question is, hii pesa unaisave, when will I access it? How can I access that money that I'm saving? There is no clear procedure on how Hustler Fund is going to be managed. Now, this is a good example. Hustler Fund, kuna nyingine inaitwa Uwezo. Uwezo Fund iko hapo pia ukora, because wameweka wanasema wanataka vijana 20 ama 15 wachukue Uwezo Fund. Vijana 15 wakipewa 70,000 ama 50,000, how much is that? To be very sincere, 21st century, this is 2025. There is no any single business utaanza niyo 50,000, 50,000, mkigawana 20 ama 15, yani unaambiwa uko na pesa ngapi in total, you go home with less than 2,000 shillings. Hiyo ni fair umelipa, because na ukila lunch Nairobi CBD unabaki hauna kitu. And the government haina plan yote ya kusaidia wananchi. Kwanza number 1 wanasema watoe uwezo fund, watoe hustler fund. Kuna pesa nyingine imepewa women rep, inaitwa ngaf. Surely ni nani amepata hiyo pesa? And ukiangalia the allocation of the amount of money inaenda kule ni pesa nyingi sana. Lakini what is the impact of that money to the society? That is why I'm saying the biggest problem tuko nayo ni kuanzia kwa serikali yetu. We need total change in leadership. Kuanzia juu na tusafishe kila mtu wako kule. Kwanza watu umekaa kwa serikali 10 years with no impact. Surely you just need to do something honorable. Utoke kabisa useme nyewe, let me give a chance to young people, new faces, walete new ideas, watuambie what is this thing they want. Because you cannot be there serving the country. Kuna watu wamekaa uongozini for more than 30 years. But these people unaona tu, they are still there and they believe they want to bring any change to us. To be very sincere, Kenya yetu inahitaji mwongozo mpya. Tunahitaji viongozi wapya, walete new ideas, wavunje kila kitu from hustler fund, uwezo fund, CDF, hizo zote they are just corruption funds ambazo wanaweka. That's why utapata MP with a salary of $1 million, let's say, anatumia 100 million ku campaign. Ukipiga hesabu ya haraka MP akipata salary for 60 months, that is a period of 5 years. Pesa ambayo alitumia campaign inarudi aje? Tujiulize. Campaign alitumia 100 million na salary yake, assuming that the MP hawezi guza hata shilingi moja, itakuwa approximately 60 million. Kuna deficit of how much? 40 million. But you will find the very MP anaishi maisha mengine ambayo huwezi amini. Anamiliki mali ambayo in 5 years these guys they acquire a lot of properties and money. This tells us clearly that this country tuko na pesa nyingi, but we don't have people who can implement, or we don't have the policies ambazo zitasaidia wananchi. Kwa hivyo nikichangia mambo ya hustler fund, the president alikuja na idea ya hustler, lakini number 1 ajitoe hiyo idea na hiyo brand ya hustler, because it doesn't make sense at all.
Kuna kitu ulikuwa unataka kusema?
Kuongeza niseme kwamba we need also to come out of the culture of populist politics, because I think it is populism that has led us to the situation that we are seeing with hustler fund. And I will give an example of the former president, the late Mwai Kibaki, who gave us a very long-term solution for so many things, and not just education, including what we see today as microfinance institutions. And that in itself is a very long-term solution for the many things that we have. We have enough microfinance institutions that can help young people to develop their businesses if they wanted. But for the government, and not just this administration, even the administrations that will come must confine themselves to ensuring that they build long-term projects that will help not only people who they are serving now, but the generations that will come. An example is dealing with the cyclic problem of education that we have witnessed since I think 8 years ago, where we want to keep on changing CBC, CBE, changing things that are inconsequential instead of dealing with the main problems. And I think if the governments, not just this government, the coming administrations were to solve these problems once and for all, then we will not have a problem with education. We'll have generations and generations that go to school and get skills, proper skills that will help them to get something for their lives, even if they do not get employed.
Yeah.
If this government were to deal with other problems, including those of financing these businesses, including building environments that allow organizations from outside to help grow this economy through small businesses and small enterprises, then that will be it. So I think there is lack of honesty in trying to ensure that people are impoverished and that the general population of people remains at the lowest levels, so that they do not have something meaningful for their lives. So that is all I would say. A government that deals a major blow to education, a government that deals major blows to health, the health sector, is no government of the people. Thank you.
Right, Bernard, I'd love to get your thoughts on MSMEs, the micro, small, medium enterprises. These particular sector groups contribute to 30% of Kenya's gross domestic product, that is GDP. What effects does the budget of 2025-26 have on these businesses, putting in mind that there's a proposed credit guarantee scheme which is able to facilitate financing for MSMEs, the tax burden for businesses, you know, at what level are we at as we speak, as well as the Amendment of Income Tax Act, in which the CS also talked about today. So what are some of the impacts of these proposals to MSMEs, especially within this financial year that is to come?
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. This is dear to my heart because every day I deal with business people, and either somebody is starting or already in business. I think the current pain point with the business people is the environment. The environment is not conducive for the people to do business. And a good government, one thing that a good government should do is, number one, is the infrastructure. Like in terms of accessibility, for example, roads. When you talk about like agriculture, you have had like farmers produce goods and crops, but taking them to the market, or you hear the brokers eat more than what the farmer, who has spent most of his time producing, using all the inputs to do that. So I think when I look at the SME market in Kenya, it's very vibrant. And one thing that I've interacted with people, both who are just starting businesses, it has been a privilege to build people's story. Like somebody comes with an idea, and they want you to help them from registration, launching a shop, getting the product, and then selling to that. And if you look, Kenya is into, Kenya, we are having an entrepreneurial spirit. We are aggressive. And I want to attest this, when COVID came, it's like everything was flat to the ground. And I'll give a very good example because I do research. When you go to town, there's a time there were a lot of exhibition shops which are selling like clothes and all of that. When COVID came, all these things were put down. And there's a time I went to town and I could clearly see the people who are there initially are not the faces. You could clearly see these are businesses. And there's currently a new trend that you see. You can pass somewhere, like you look at businesses that have been said, like, let's use the example, Buruburu is near. I've always been amazed by the Mutindia. Let me use that as a case study. You heard of the case of fires, where Mutumbas are burnt and all that. Then you come the following week, the same Kenyans are building by themselves, going to get stock again. So what does that tell you? Let me use the Kiswahili word. Wakenya ni watu wa kujituma. And we really tried. You know, my first time to come to Nairobi, we arrived by a bus called Zubini Matongo. And by 3 a.m., you are light at the street of Nairobi. Everybody is running up and down. Go to Mombasa. It's not like Nairobi, for example. Like my first time to go to Mombasa at 3, I wanted to go to the bank. You look, people are not even doing anything. But Nairobi, the buses, even just my first time crossing the road. So there's that spirit of people want to try. And if the environment of doing business could be conducive, and you have talked about the diaspora, this is something I've faced. Look, there's been the multinationals, a company like GlaxoSmithKline, that has been in this country for many years, making the medicine and selling to the market. But now they are deciding to close their manufacturing in Kenya and go to a country like Ghana, outside of the East Africa, because they are saying the cost of doing production of their products is cheaper. Actually, they are saying they better produce the other side and bring back and sell to us. What does that tell you? Look at electricity. This is the country, you were just talking about the parastatals, that we need to check if they do 7 years. They're not performing, we need to interject them. Kenya Power's got monopoly, but why should we have a blackout in the entire country, where everybody's posting on Twitter. Kwenu iko. So if those things can be checked, the environment for the SMEs can be friendly. Another thing, I will just share with Ruth that the system that Kenya is trying to put into place is like the American system, whereby with one number, I can know all your details. I can know what you are. I can know your hospital history. I can know your history like crime if you have done something. But they are not remembering it has taken America over 200 years for civilization. By the way, some of the proposals are not bad, but we cannot change them or do them all of them at a time. Then when you come to the tax amendments and all that, to me, most of these amendments that are being made, we need to build on the already working thing. There was this system that was called e-teams, whereby the small scale people, even Mama Mboga, actually they said for the Mama Mboga, they will do a version of USD. Ile unaweza sema star something time for them to pay tax. Mtu mwenye anaweza access tablet, wanasema watakuwekea version. It only tells you they are interested about pulling all those resources to their system. Our tank has been collecting, but it is leaking. So long as we don't, like the corruption, the other day the former director was talking about how much billions we lose in corruption in a minute. If you look at those figures, so if they could really be able to deal with those issues of spillage and all that, and he just talked about the MPs and the number. Look at America. We talk about states. But if you look at those states, they are so big. If you look like somebody's a governor serving a whole country, like in the African perspective. But the reason why they are delivering is because the system and the structure is working in all that. So even the issue of the county, most of the governors, for example, you have heard the cases that have been in the court, whereby the governors gave a tender to their relatives and all that. But in truth, I was looking at the case even of the Kiambu County, whereby the penalty, you are telling the money that has been lost over 500 million, then you tell me somebody should pay a bond of how much? Just a percentage of what has been lost. So there is no strictness when it comes to dealing with the craft. So if those things can be done and then put in an environment for the SMEs, Kenyans can do anything. And they are very creative. Look even at nowadays, when you go to town on Sunday, just look at what the young people are doing. Nowadays, you want to take a photograph, just go to town on Sunday. They're just grabbing and telling you take a photo. But they are trying to make a living out of that, but they are not being supported. Look at things like internet. I was just, currently there's something about the technology, and like something that is right now moving the world is AI. Actually, it is changing how people communicate. I was amazed that Dubai, the government has paid AI for every citizen. Like this AI called ChatGTP, that you can literally tell him, for example, ChatGTP, I'm going to a meeting. Can you prepare for me like my CV and all that? So Dubai government have gone further that you are a citizen, you can access that information, preparing their citizens. So I think our government needs to learn, like SMEs, how can we empower SMEs? Number one, with the infrastructure, like even the funding part of it. You can give somebody funding, but if the foundation, like you have had cases whereby the loans she was talking about, you are being given the loan, but the cost of maintaining that loan is very high. So you give me the loan, I try, like even the asset finance, some of the vehicles that are, most of them are in loans. There is a time, like even the time of COVID, one of the things that happened a lot is recovery. Banks were recovering. You open the newspaper, they are selling cars that have been recovered. So you realize that the government is saying they are doing, but at least the person is suffering on the ground. So if those things can be corrected, we are vibrant people. If you see Indians coming to this country and they do things,
then
if
there's
you
something
see Somalians, go to Eastleigh right now. If you have never gone to Eastleigh for the last, you will be shocked what is happening. So the spirit is there, but we are lacking the support, because to me, if a government could just do education, infrastructure, and that security, even the security thing, where you know any place you are going, you are secure. So those basic things, we are not asking for that. If our tax can be used to be able to just do their medicine. The hospitals, let's have drugs. I can, like, at any time when I enter a hospital, I can have access to good health. Only that.
Right.
Ni kama Bolo, kuna jambo anataka kusema.
Yes, I hope some of my points will not be redundant because we've moved a bit from the topic, but allow me to start with the topic on SMEs. And you mentioned Isili. And when you mentioned Isili, I asked myself, in line to the question you had asked earlier of the areas that we can collect funds. I don't know how many of us here have gone to Isili, but when you go, you deal with cash. So how is KRA going to tax when there is no paper trail?
Sasa kuna swali nilikuwa nataka kuuliza, hii ushuru ambao wanataka kukusanya mapato trilioni 3.3 ya kufadhili bajeti hii, na Bwana Bernard hapa amesema mazingira ya sasa ya kiuchumi ni magumu. Serikali itafikia vipi mapato haya?
What is going to happen is that Kenyans are now going to go the Isili way, which is no using M-Pesa till number. Don't send me money, it is cash. People are not going to put money in the banks anymore. They're going to go back to putting money under their mattresses. So I think that is something they need to look at and go back to the earlier suggestions that I had shared of how they can collect revenue. But also it is important to note, number one, that there are counties that are pushing away SMEs. There are companies that will tell you, if they're doing promotions, they will tell you, don't do it in X county. Don't do it in Y county, because when you go there, watatusumbua maneno ya licenses, watatusumbua maneno ya hongo, watatusumbua uko. In fact, ikifika a particular time, kwa sababu hawana stima uko, you will not be able to trade. So those are some of the conversations that we need to have. That even at the devolved level, the environment is not conducive. And when we say the environment is not conducive, we mean it could be something as simple as infrastructure, something as simple as the cost of licenses, and I alluded to that earlier on, and I gave Nairobi County as an example. It could even be something as simple as, are we able to, and I know they touched on this either in the bill, if I'm not wrong, in the draft bill that was being discussed during the public participation meetings, that international companies that are setting up here need to give a certain percentage of their employment to young people. Yeah. What that does is it opens up avenues for employment. Now, countries that are earning in terms of are earning digitally, so Netflix and the likes, also need to remit a certain amount, and they need to have physical offices here. So when they have a physical office, what that happens, what that does, organizations like Bolt, who are operating but do not have an office here, so you can't even make a complaint properly, is number one, the person who's going to be there, that is employment that has been created. That is tax that's going to be paid somewhere. Yeah. So those are some of the small ways that they can look at. Unfortunately, the European Commission officially listed Kenya as a high-risk country for money laundering and terrorism financing. That has an effect to our businesses. It has an effect to our investors. It has an effect to the kind of activities that we are going to do here in this country. There's a joke that people always say. There are two jokes that people say that, and it's very unfortunate. The first is, hey, like it's expensive, wacha niuze figo. Because now that is the quickest way to make money. And there is black market for it. The second one is, ama niingie wash juma neno imekuwa ngumu. What is that telling you? That we are in a country that is condoning this, and that is the only way to go. So as a young person, I am being told and encouraged that the way to go is not business. The way to go is either money laundering. The way to go is gold scams. The way to go is selling your kidney. So those are some of the ways we are communicating, and that's very it's a risk. So maybe tax incentives. Can we encourage tax incentives so that we are telling companies that have more than 70% of employment being young people or women, they are going to get tax incentives. Companies that have got or county governments that whose I know there's the allocation of the amount of tenders that are supposed to be going to women and young people. But can we go further and say that over and above this, if more than 70% of them have gone to young people, and payment has been completed, because that's where the catch is, and payment has been completed, those county governments get an increase in allocation of funds. Can we have such incentives? I want to be the devil's advocate a little bit in just 2 points. The first is it's a bit interesting and a bit funny, and I never thought I would ever see a day where someone from ODM who was advocating that Baba will give us 6,000 is complaining about Hustler Fund. Yet the concept was almost the same. So when we're talking about politics. We need to start from us right here. Because how are we going to change things if you and us at that level we are compromised? I mean, we need to be a bit honest. We have people, when the government was talking about hustler, and this is why I said I want to be the devil's advocate.
Yes.
It was looking at the common mananchi. If you walk to certain areas, they don't buy the toothpaste tube. You go outside, and every day you're charged 5 shillings for that one. I don't know what to call it. That one swipe of the toothpaste. There are places that you go to, they do not have toilets inside their houses. It's not self-contained, okay? So they are charged toilet paper. They are charged when they go to the washroom. So what that 500 shillings will do for a common monanchi is they will go and buy 4 tubes of toothpaste, for example. And they will buy toothbrushes, and their business has started, and they will grow from there. There are some whose limit was 3,000 shillings. They will go and buy the smoky and tell Farmer's Choice, give me the cut, okay? Allow me to pay you back in this installment, but I have been able to get the money for the smokies. And they will go and they will get their smokies. There are those who will, be able to buy the ingredients that are needed to make the soap, the liquid soap that you then buy. Ile akupima. Not this liquid soap that you buy in the supermarket. So I think when Hustler Fund was being conceptualized, it really did mean the common mananchi at the lowest level economically. The problem with the Hustler Fund was the structuring bit of it. In terms of now what he was communicating, where do the savings go? How do I access the savings? In terms of excitement and in the hope of accomplishing something within the first 100 days, they rushed to launch it without really ensuring that the structures are okay. But in terms of the idea, I think it was a brilliant idea. I think it's something that still can go along when it's something that can be done very well. And lastly, on being the devil's advocate, when we say we don't need 47 deputy governors, it's a very dangerous statement because we don't know the kind of power we are giving to speakers of the county assemblies. And we all know that speakers of county assemblies, just like the DGs, it's mostly a political appointment. Because what will happen is I will go and lobby the MCAs, and actually the MCAs' first task as they come into county assemblies, even before they understand their mandate and how lobbying is done, is to elect a speaker. And that is why you will always hear them saying, speaker so and so ametwita mahali ametupatia kila mtu 20,000. Ule pia anataka speaker ametupatia X amount of money. So do we really want to go that route? What we need to do is just change to ensure, and we've seen some counties are doing this successfully. But the deputy governor is not just a deputy governor, because then they become idle, and we see the Rigathi Ruto situation where one is fighting for power and the other one is saying you just need to be a deputy. Let them be given an extra task. Let him be or her be a deputy governor in charge of the education docket, a deputy governor in charge of agriculture.
Then why do we need the CSAs?
And that is the thing. So when they are in charge of that docket, there is no CEC for that docket. And it is working in some counties where if the deputy governor is also in charge of agriculture, then there is no CEC for that docket. So it does, one, address the issue of deputy governors being idle, but two, it also addresses the issue of having, like you say, a lot of people being paid. So I think it would be very dangerous to say that deputy governors, we don't need deputy governors, because then what happens when we'll be having impeachment? Remember, speakers of county assemblies are the people who lead these impeachment processes. So if I'm a speaker of a county assembly and we don't have a deputy governor, rest assured what Kawera Mwangaza went through would then be very little. I'll be making sure that my governor every month there's an impeachment motion because I am next in command. So I think those are some of the reactions that I wanted to give. And finally, on the issue of populist politics, I just wanted to caution that even as we look at this budget, and I know the opposition and the different factions of opposition have really been pushing and saying that this budget is bad. What I haven't seen, and I say this also because of the neonatal tax, that particular discussion came from the opposition side when the draft bill was being discussed, but it's not something that went through. And Buddy has discussed this and he has said it even in the public participation. Now, we've got the front runner of opposition politics, which is our former deputy president, who still calls himself the deputy president. And he's also engaging in populist politics. Number one, not once have I heard him say that instead of these suggestions that you are giving in the budget, why don't you consider this instead? Yake ni kusema tu ni mbaya, lakini solution hapeani, which is very dangerous. Two, we have also seen him attack things that he supported when he was in government. So then my question is, are you now complaining because you're out of government? So it is a case of do you support, why do you feel that corruption is a bad thing? And the answer then becomes, because I am not part of it. So it is very, it's very dangerous. So even as we look at people's different views on the budget, let's ask ourselves, anapinga, but are they giving us a solution to it?
Muda wetu umeyoma, lakini so nitakupatia. I'll give you an opportunity to wrap it up, but please also respond to. I know you want to respond to.
Absolutely.
I know you want to respond to. So please do so, and then wrap it up in a minute, please.
Thank you so much. Labda kuweka tu mambo haraka wazi kidogo. Sisi kama ODM, we're not part of the government. Sisi tulisaidia serikali. Tuliwapatia experts waende wasaidie serikali. And one of the experts ambao tumedonate ni CS wa finance, John Mbadi. Lakini dadangu kusema kuwa tuko huku na kule kidogo anakosea. Na kitu kingine ambacho labda ningependa kumuelimisha kidogo, sababu nimeona amekuja kama mtu ametumwa na serikali. Kuna uwezekano, lakini ningependa kusema kitu kingine kidogo. I'm not against the 47 deputy governors, lakini I'm against the constitution. That's why I was suggesting ndio tuweze kuangalia our constitution, our finance, budget, hii budget yetu ndio iweze kuwa kitu ambacho tunaweza angazia vizuri na tuweze kuona matokeo. Indeed we need to reduce the number of counties. Ili tusije tukawa na ofisi nyingi ambazo hazina faida. Hata Saidi kimuuliza dadangu hapa ajui deputy governor wa Nairobi anaitwa nani. That's the reality. And even in your home county, wengi wetu hatujui ni akina nani kwa sababu the constitution haijawapatia their mandate. So wako tu pale wanapata mshahara. So my idea is tukipunguza, and this is why we as ODM during the last general election, we wanted to give you an alternative of better leadership through Raila Amolo Odinga. Though watu walikataa. That is why sasa tunamsaidia tusiete tuko ndani ya serikali. Kwa hivyo yote 9-10 tunasema kuwa shida kubwa tuko nayo na hii bajeti yetu ya mwaka 2025-26 ni kuwa number 1, viongozi ambao wamekalia pale juu hawaelewi ambacho kinastahili kufanywa. Asante.
Gugi, in a minute please.
In a minute, let me say that finally we need to come to a conclusion as a country and as a people that we need long-term solutions. And one of the long-term solutions is to solve the problem of our politics once and for all. And in doing so, I think we also need to educate ourselves on the mandate of all these leaders, from the top to the lowest one, who is the MCA, and to understand that as we give them mandate, we also need to keep them accountable. So we must educate ourselves and even those who are kule mashinani and even our parents that our responsibility as citizens does not end at the ballot. It continues, it is beyond the ballot. We must keep these leaders accountable and ensure that we demand for the best from them because they promised and because the constitution has demanded that they must do that. And also in conclusion, let me say that I want to send my condolences to the family of Albert Ojwang, and also to all other Kenyans who have suffered in the hands of this administration. And it is a thing that we must put to the past, and we must ensure that we must hold this government and all other governments to account on all the wrongs that are done to our people and to every young person, be they old or young in this country. So condolences to that family, and I hope that in future we will do better as a country and that justice will seem to be done. Thank you.
Asante. Bernard, in a minute.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I don't have much to say, but just to tell my fellow Kenyans, I know we are facing a very tough moment, but I think they say when the going gets tough, the tough get going. So if you are in business or if you are in employment, no matter the challenges you are facing, it is always very good to reevaluate and see, even as the budget has been read, if it means you downsizing for you to be able to live, it doing that. Let's not be rigid or not flexible. So, and another thing, I think it would be a very disservice now that we are talking about the budget there's the current amnesty going on for people who are filing taxes.
Yeah.
And I think since I'm on national television, and this is my domain, it's good to sensitize people. So if there is anybody across the world, and most of all the Kenyans who are in diaspora, anybody with a PIN, if you have not been filing your taxes and you are afraid that the government will give you the penalties, I think there's an amnesty that started running from December last year, and it is ending 30th of this June, the way the tax filing is ending. So if you are having penalties, not the principal tax. So the thing, if you are having the principal tax, you'll have to pay the principal tax. But if it is penalties even for 20 years, I dealt with a case last week that somebody was offset over 800,000 because their company was every year there was VAT and also that. So take this opportunity, because after this, the government, just as Ruth said, there's a way they send a message. We are giving you 7 days to clear this outstanding arrears, or we'll knock on your door. So thank you very much to Cynthia and the team, and also the EBN management. It is always a privilege to come here. And one thing I'll really be able to request is that we need to create more programs to sensitize. And I'll give you a very simple example. I would love you to call me to this studio and just teach people on how to use eCitizen. Only that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bernard. Ruth, kwa dakika moja.
I think mine really is to encourage people to just be proactive in looking at what does the budget say, what does the finance bill have for me, so that then we are able to engage. And also to let people know that the reading of the finance bill really is normally towards the end. It's actually a budget cycle. So it's a cycle that goes from year to year, and I think I've shared that on my pages quite a lot. But it's a budget cycle, and not just at the national government, but also at the county government. There are a lot of funds that have gone there, and we need to look at, you know, the different fiscal papers that also are developed at that particular level. But the only way to engage is to learn. You don't need to be able to hear the big English and the long 2 hours that the CS has spoken. Go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, highlight for me in 30 points, what are the things that I need to know? I come from Lamu County, what are the things I need to know? It will tell you, for example, Lamu is one of the ones that have gotten the least in terms of budget allocation. It will tell you this is what you have. So let's be proactive to learn about it. I think that would be my message. And let's not focus so much on National Assembly. We have quite a lot to do at the county governments as well.
All right. Thank you very much to our panelists tonight. For one last time, Ruth Bolo's a governance and gender expert, as well as the board chair of the Young Women Leaders Connect. We also have next to her Bernard Ocheng, who's a business developer as well as a financial consultant. We also have Ngugi Ndegwa from Ustawi Kenya, the executive director, and Juma Ngule, who's the chair of the ODM Youth League Westlands. Thank you very much to all of you for your time this evening. Always a pleasure to have you. All right, we wrap it up at that point. This has been our special coverage on the budget 2025-2026. Tonight, more conversations will be had concerning this up to the point where the finance bill of 2025 is passed into law at the floor of the National Assembly. Kwa Kiswahili anasema tumeweka kikomo. Asante sana, naitwa Cynthia Nanjala.